Hello everyone. Welcome back to Easy Listening English.
I'm Linda.
Do you understand English but still freeze when it is time to speak? Do you know a lot of words, but your mind goes blank the moment someone asks you a question? You are not alone. And today, I will show you a simple way to think in English more naturally, more quickly, and more confidently. And today I want to talk about one of the biggest problems that stops English learners from speaking fluently. It is not vocabulary. It is not grammar. It is not even pronunciation. The real problem is something much deeper, and most learners do not even realize they're doing it. They translate silently in their heads before they speak. If this sounds familiar, don't worry, because that is exactly what we are going to fix together today. I remember when I first started learning another language. Every time someone asked me a simple question, my brain immediately began searching for words in my native language. Then I tried to find the English equivalent. Then I checked the grammar. Then I worried about making a mistake. By the time I was finally ready to answer, the conversation had already moved on. Maybe you have experienced the same thing. Someone asks you, "What did you do yesterday?" And even though you know the answer, your mind suddenly feels blank. The problem is not that you don't know enough English. The problem is that your brain is following a slow route. Imagine you want to drive to a nearby store. Instead of taking the direct road, you travel through 3 different cities before reaching your destination. That is exactly what happens when you translate. First, you think in your native language. Second, you convert the idea into English. Third, you check if the sentence sounds correct. Only then do you speak. This process takes time, and real conversations do not wait for us. Native speakers do not translate when they speak. They connect ideas directly to words. When they see a chair, they do not think of another word first. They simply see the object and immediately know it is a chair. The connection is direct. Fast. Automatic. That is why they can respond quickly. Their brains are not carrying extra weight. They are not taking unnecessary steps. Today, I want to introduce a simple technique that can help you build this direct connection. I call it labeling your world. The idea is surprisingly simple. Instead of looking at an object and thinking of its name in your native language, you train yourself to connect directly to the English word. You remove the middle step. You create a faster pathway inside your brain. Let's try something right now. Look around a room where you are sitting. Don't overthink. Just look. Maybe you can see a table. Maybe you can see a phone. Maybe there is a window, a door, a lamp, a notebook, or a bottle of water. As soon as you see the object, say its English name. Don't translate. Don't analyze. Don't worry about grammar. Just name it. Table.
Phone.
Window.
Door.
Lamp. Notebook. Bottle.
Chair.
Computer.
Clock.
Notice how simple this feels. You are not building sentences yet. You are simply creating direct connections. Every time you do this exercise, you strengthen those connections a little more. Your brain begins to understand that English is not something that must pass through another language first. Many learners underestimate how powerful this habit can be. They think fluency comes from memorizing thousands of words. Vocabulary is important, of course, but fluency is also about speed. It is about reducing the time between thought and speech. If every word has to travel through a translation process, speaking will always feel difficult. Even advanced learners sometimes struggle because they never train this direct connection. I want you to imagine walking through your home tomorrow morning. As you move from room to room, quietly label everything you see in English.
Bed.
Pillow. Mirror. Toothbrush.
Sink. Towel.
Refrigerator.
Coffee. Cup. Spoon.
You do not need perfect sentences. In fact, I want you to forget about sentences for a moment. Focus only on building a strong bridge between your eyes and English words. At first, you may notice some gaps. You might see an object and realize you don't know its English name. That is perfectly normal. Instead of feeling frustrated, become curious. Look up the word. Learn it. Then use it several times during the day. The next time you see that object, the word will come more quickly. Little by little, your English world becomes larger. The goal is not perfection. The goal is speed and confidence. Think about how children learn language. They do not begin with complex grammar rules. They begin by connecting words to the world around them. They hear the word. They see the object. They repeat the connection hundreds of times. Eventually, the process becomes automatic. As adult learners, we can use the same principle. Now I have a challenge for you. Look around your room and name 10 objects in English within 5 seconds. Ready?
Go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many did you get? Maybe you named 5. Maybe 7. Maybe all 10. Whatever your result was, that is your starting point. The important thing is not the number. The important thing is that you are training your brain to think directly in English. I want you to practice this exercise every day. You can do it while cooking. You can do it while walking.
You can do it while shopping.
Every environment becomes an English classroom. Every object becomes an opportunity to strengthen your fluency. The more often you do it, the more natural it becomes. Something interesting starts to happen after a while. Instead of seeing a chair and thinking of the word in your native language first, the English word appears immediately. Instead of translating, you recognize. Instead of hesitating, you respond. This small change creates a huge difference in your speaking ability. You begin to feel faster, more relaxed, more confident. And this is where our journey really begins. Right now, you are learning how to name your world using individual English words. That is an essential first step. However, conversations are not built from isolated words. Real communication happens when we connect those words into ideas. If I simply say coffee, that is not much of a conversation. If I say I drink coffee every morning before work, now we have something meaningful. So the next question becomes, how do we take simple words and transform them into longer, more natural responses? How do we avoid giving short answers that make conversation stop? How do we continue speaking even when we are nervous? In the next part, I am going to show you a very powerful technique that can instantly expand your answers. With one simple structure, you will learn how to turn a short sentence into a rich and engaging response. Let's move on and discover the 5W 1H expansion formula. Now that you know how to connect English words directly to the world around you, it is time to take the next step. In the previous lesson, we focused on individual words. We trained our brains to see an object and immediately recognize its English name. That was an important foundation. However, real conversations require more than single words. If someone asks me about my weekend, I cannot simply say coffee or park or friends. I need to connect ideas together and create meaningful sentences. The good news is that there is a very simple technique that can help you do exactly that. One of the most common mistakes English learners make is giving answers that are too short. Imagine someone asks, "What do you usually do in the morning?" And you answer, "I drink coffee." Grammatically, that answer is correct. There is nothing wrong with it. But the conversation feels incomplete. It ends almost as soon as it begins. Native speakers naturally provide more information. They expand their thoughts without even realizing it. Fortunately, this is a skill that can be learned. I remember when I used to struggle with this myself. Whenever someone asked me a question, I searched for the shortest possible answer because I was afraid of making mistakes. If someone asked whether I liked reading, I would simply say, yes, I do. If someone asked about my hobbies, I would answer, I like music. My answers were technically correct, but they did not help me build fluency. They did not train my brain to think longer in English. More importantly, they did not keep conversations alive. That is why I want to introduce something I call the 5W 1H expansion formula. You may have heard of these question words before.
Who, what, where, when, why, and how.
Most learners use these words to ask questions, but today we are going to use them in a different way. We are going to use them to expand our answers. Whenever you make a simple statement, you can immediately ask yourself these 6 questions. Each answer adds another layer of information. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine I say, I like coffee. That is a complete sentence. However, it is also very short. Now let me ask myself some questions.
What kind of coffee do I like?
I like black coffee. When do I drink it? I usually drink it in the morning. Where do I drink it? I often drink it at home before work. Why do I like it? Because it helps me feel awake and focused. How do I prepare it? I usually make it myself using a small coffee machine. Suddenly, one simple sentence becomes a complete response. Instead of saying, I like coffee, I can now say, I like black coffee, especially in the morning. I usually drink it at home before work because it helps me feel more awake and focused. I normally prepare it myself using a coffee machine. Notice how much richer that answer sounds. The difference is not advanced grammar. The difference is information. This technique works because it gives your brain a roadmap. One reason people stop speaking is that they run out of ideas. They say one sentence and then freeze. The 5W 1H formula prevents that from happening. After every statement, there is always another question waiting. There is always another detail you can add. Instead of wondering what to say next, you simply follow the structure. Let's try another example together. Imagine someone asks me, what is your favorite hobby? My first answer might be, my favorite hobby is reading. That is the basic idea. Now I begin expanding. What do I like to read? I enjoy personal development books and novels. When do I usually read? I often read in the evening before bed. Where do I read? Usually on my couch or in a quiet corner of a cafe. Why do I enjoy reading? Because it helps me relax and learn new ideas. How often do I read? I try to read at least 30 minutes every day. Now listen to the expanded version. My favorite hobby is reading. I enjoy reading personal development books and novels. I usually read in the evening before bed, either on my couch or in a quiet cafe. I love reading because it helps me relax and learn new things. I try to spend at least 30 minutes reading every day. That sounds much more natural and engaging. The best part is that you do not need to answer every single question every time. The formula is not a rule. It is a tool. Sometimes you will answer 3 questions. Sometimes 4. Sometimes all 6. The goal is simply to keep the conversation moving. Every extra detail creates more speaking practice. Every extra sentence strengthens your fluency. Now I want to focus on a topic that almost everyone can relate to. Morning routines. This is an excellent topic because it contains many details that can easily be expanded. Let me give you a short answer first. I wake up at 7 o'clock. That answer is correct, but it is very limited. Let's use the formula. When do I wake up? At 7 o'clock. What do I do after waking up? I drink a glass of water. Where do I usually have breakfast? In my kitchen. Why do I follow this routine? Because it helps me start the day with energy. How do I feel afterward? I feel more focused and productive. Now the answer becomes much longer. I usually wake up at 7 o'clock every morning. After getting out of bed, I drink a glass of water and stretch for a few minutes. I normally have breakfast in my kitchen before starting work. I follow this routine because it helps me begin the day with more energy and focus. After completing my morning routine, I feel ready to handle my responsibilities. Can you see what happened? We did not use difficult vocabulary. We did not use complicated grammar structures. We simply added details. Fluency often comes from saying more with simple language, not from saying less with difficult language. Many learners spend years searching for advanced words when they would improve much faster by learning how to expand simple ideas. Now I would like you to imagine that we are having a real conversation. I ask you, tell me about your morning routine. Do not stop after one sentence. Start with a basic answer. Then ask yourself the 6 questions.
What? Where? When? Why? Who? How?
Maybe you wake up early. Maybe you exercise. Maybe you prepare breakfast for your family. Maybe you check your phone. Every detail matters because every detail gives you another opportunity to speak. One thing I love about this technique is that it reduces anxiety. Many learners panic because they think they need a brilliant answer. They think they need to sound intelligent or impressive. In reality, most conversations are built from ordinary details. People talk about what they eat, where they go, what they watch, how they spend their weekends. The secret is not extraordinary content. The secret is expanding ordinary content. Think about a tree. Your main idea is the trunk. The additional details are the branches. Without branches, the tree looks small and incomplete. Without details, your answer feels short and fragile. Every time you answer a question, imagine growing more branches. Add another detail. Add another explanation. Add another example.
Keep building.
Let's practice together one more time. Suppose someone asks me, what do you do after work? My basic answer is, I go to the gym. Now I expand it. Where is the gym? It is close to my apartment. When do I go? Around 6 in the evening. Why do I go? Because exercise helps me stay healthy and reduce stress. How long do I stay there? Usually about an hour. What do I do afterward? I go home and prepare dinner. The final answer sounds like this. After work, I usually go to the gym near my apartment. I normally arrive around 6 in the evening and spend about an hour exercising. I enjoy going there because it helps me stay healthy and reduce stress after a busy day. When I finish my workout, I head home and prepare dinner. That is a natural response that keeps the conversation alive. As you continue practicing this method, something interesting begins to happen. At first, you consciously ask yourself the 6 questions. Later, the process becomes automatic. Your brain starts expanding ideas without effort. Instead of producing one sentence, you naturally produce 5 or 6. Instead of worrying about silence, you become comfortable speaking for longer periods of time. This is one of the major differences between beginner and advanced speakers. Advanced speakers are not necessarily thinking faster. Often, they simply know how to develop an idea. They know how to add context. They know how to provide examples. They know how to explain their reasons. These skills make their speech feel smooth and continuous. Before we move on, I want you to complete a small challenge. Think about your own morning routine right now. Start with one simple sentence. Then expand it using the 5W1H formula. Try to speak for at least 30 seconds without stopping. Do not worry about mistakes. Do not worry about perfection. Focus only on adding information. The more details you provide, the more fluent you become. And now we arrive at an important realization. Expanding your answers with facts and details is a fantastic skill. It helps you speak longer. It helps you think more clearly. It helps conversations flow naturally. However, there is still one missing ingredient. Facts alone can sometimes sound mechanical. They tell people what happened, but they do not tell people how you feel. Human beings connect through emotions. They remember stories that make them feel something. They relate to experiences that sound genuine and personal. In the next part, I am going to show you how to transform your English from informative to engaging. You will learn how to combine a main idea, an emotion, and a personal experience into one powerful response. This simple formula will help your English sound more natural, more memorable, and much more human. Let's continue and discover the emotion weaving technique. Something interesting happens when people start becoming more comfortable speaking English. Their sentences become longer. Their answers contain more details. They can explain what they do, where they go, and why they make certain choices. Yet, even after developing these skills, many learners still feel that something is missing. Their English sounds clear, but not memorable. It sounds correct, but not deeply personal. The words communicate information, but they do not always create connection. That is because communication is not only about facts. It is also about feelings, experiences, and human emotion. When you think about the conversations that stay in your memory, they are rarely the ones filled with statistics or simple descriptions. Instead, they are usually the conversations where someone shared excitement, disappointment, hope, fear, gratitude, or curiosity. People naturally connect with emotions. We remember how someone felt. We remember the story behind the words. We remember the small details that reveal personality. This is true in every language, and it is equally true in English. For a long time, I believed that fluency meant speaking quickly and accurately. I focused on vocabulary lists. I practiced grammar exercises. I worked hard to build complete sentences. Those things were important, but eventually I noticed something. The conversations that felt most natural were not necessarily the ones with perfect grammar. They were the conversations where people expressed genuine emotions. A simple sentence filled with feeling often had more impact than a complicated sentence with none. Imagine someone asks you how your day was. One answer might be, "My day was busy." There is nothing wrong with that response. It communicates a fact. However, it does not invite much connection. Now imagine a different answer. "My day was busy, but I actually felt proud because I finished a project that had been stressing me out for weeks." Suddenly, the listener understands more than your schedule. They understand your emotional experience. They learn something about your challenges and your mindset. This is where a powerful formula can help. Whenever you answer a question, try building your response using 3 simple layers. The first layer is the main idea. The second layer is the emotion connected to that idea. The third layer is a personal experience that explains the emotion. Main idea, emotion, experience. These 3 pieces work together to create a richer and more engaging response. Let's start with a simple example. Imagine someone asks me, "Do you enjoy traveling?" My main idea is easy. Yes, I enjoy traveling. That gives the listener basic information. Next comes the emotion. I feel excited whenever I visit a new place. Now, the answer has more life. Finally, I add a personal experience. Last year, I visited a small coastal town and spent an entire afternoon exploring streets I had never seen before. That experience reminded me how much I enjoy discovering new environments. The response now feels more complete because it contains information, emotion, and memory. Notice that none of these sentences are particularly difficult. The magic does not come from advanced vocabulary. The magic comes from depth. Anyone can say, "I like traveling." Fewer people continue speaking long enough to explain why that interest matters to them emotionally. When you add emotion and experience, you transform a simple statement into a meaningful conversation. Let's examine another example. Suppose someone asks me, "Do you like working from home?" My main idea could be, "Yes, I like working from home." My emotion might be, "It makes me feel more relaxed and focused." Then I add an experience. A few years ago, I spent hours commuting every day, and I often arrived home exhausted. Working from home has given me more time and energy, which has improved my daily life. The listener now understands not only my preference, but also the reason behind it. One reason this formula is so effective is that emotions create natural speaking opportunities. Facts often end quickly. Emotions naturally lead to explanations. If I say, "I felt nervous," people immediately wonder why. If I say, "I felt excited," they want to know what happened. Emotions encourage stories, and stories encourage fluency. Instead of forcing yourself to speak more, you simply follow your thoughts and experiences. Many learners worry that they do not have interesting stories to tell. I hear this concern all the time. Someone says, "Linda, my life is boring. I don't have exciting experiences." I completely understand that feeling, but I disagree with the conclusion. Interesting communication does not require dramatic events. Most meaningful conversations are built from ordinary moments. A pleasant morning walk. A difficult work meeting. A funny misunderstanding. A favorite meal. A conversation with a friend. Small experiences can become powerful stories when you describe how they affected you. Think about the last time you felt genuinely happy. It may not have been a life-changing event. Perhaps you finished a task that had been worrying you. Maybe you spent time with family. Maybe you enjoyed a quiet evening with a good book. The event itself might seem ordinary, but the emotion attached to it makes it meaningful. That emotion becomes the bridge between you and the listener. Let's practice with a very common question. Someone asks, "How are you today?" Many learners answer with only 2 or 3 words.
I'm fine.
I'm good. Not bad. Those responses are acceptable, but they end the conversation almost immediately. Instead, let's apply the 3-layer formula. My main idea might be, "I'm feeling pretty good today." Then I add an emotion. I feel motivated and optimistic. Next comes the experience. This morning, I completed several tasks that I had been postponing, and that gave me a strong sense of accomplishment. Suddenly, a simple greeting becomes an opportunity for meaningful communication. Here is another example. I'm a little tired today. Honestly, I feel slightly drained because I've had a very busy week. Over the last few days, I've been balancing multiple projects, so I'm looking forward to getting some rest this weekend. This answer feels natural because it mirrors how people actually speak in real conversations. Now I would like you to think about your own answer. If someone asked how you were feeling right now, what would you say? Start with the main idea. Then describe the emotion. Finally, explain the experience behind that feeling. Don't rush. Give yourself permission to explore your thoughts. Fluency grows when ideas have room to develop. One challenge many learners face is a limited emotional vocabulary. They know basic words like happy, sad, angry, and tired, but they struggle to express more specific feelings. Expanding this area of vocabulary can make a huge difference. Instead of always saying happy, you might say grateful, relieved, delighted, encouraged, or satisfied. Instead of saying sad, you might say disappointed, discouraged, frustrated, or lonely. These words help paint a more accurate picture of your experience. For example, I could say, "I felt happy after finishing the project." That works. However, I could also say, I felt relieved after finishing the project because it had been causing me stress for several weeks. The second version gives the listener a clearer understanding of my emotional state. Specific emotions create stronger communication. Another useful technique is describing emotional change. Real life is rarely static. Our feelings evolve throughout the day. Perhaps you felt nervous before an interview but confident afterward. Maybe you felt frustrated during a task but satisfied once it was completed. Describing these changes naturally extends your speaking and makes your stories more dynamic. Imagine I say, I was nervous before giving a presentation. My hands were shaking and I kept reviewing my notes. However, once I started speaking, I became more confident. By the end of the presentation, I actually felt proud of myself. This response takes the listener on a journey. The emotional progression makes the story more engaging. As you continue practicing English, try paying attention to your emotions throughout the day. When something positive happens, ask yourself how it makes you feel. When something challenging happens, identify the emotion it creates. Then connect that emotion to a specific experience. This habit strengthens both your self-awareness and your speaking ability. I often encourage learners to keep a simple speaking journal. At the end of each day, choose one experience and describe it using the 3-layer formula. Start with the event. Add the emotion. Finish with a brief explanation. This exercise only takes a few minutes, but it trains your brain to think more naturally in English. Over time, emotional expression becomes automatic. Something remarkable begins to happen when you develop this skill. Conversations stop feeling like language exercises. Instead, they start feeling like genuine communication. You are no longer focused only on finding the correct words. You are focused on expressing yourself. That shift changes everything. Confidence grows because you stop chasing perfection and start sharing ideas. The people around you also notice the difference. They respond more positively because your answers feel authentic. They ask follow-up questions. They become curious about your experiences. The conversation develops naturally because you are giving them something meaningful to respond to. Communication becomes a shared experience rather than a test. As we continue building this ability, you will discover that emotions, experiences, and personal reflections can be applied to almost any topic. Whether you are discussing work, hobbies, relationships, technology, health, or future goals, the same principle remains true. Facts tell people what happened. Emotions reveal why it mattered. Experiences bring the story to life. When these 3 elements work together, your English becomes more vivid, more engaging, and far more memorable. Every day, whether we realize it or not, we are surrounded by conversations about technology. We wake up and check our phones. We scroll through social media. We answer messages. We watch videos. We read news articles. We open emails. For many people, the digital world is no longer a separate part of life. It has become deeply connected to work, education, entertainment, and even relationships. Because of this, learning how to talk about technology and modern lifestyles is an important part of becoming a confident English speaker. When people discuss their daily lives, technology often becomes part of the conversation naturally. Someone might ask how much time you spend online. A friend may talk about taking a break from social media. A colleague could mention feeling overwhelmed by constant notifications. These topics appear everywhere, and they provide excellent opportunities to practice speaking in English because they connect directly to experiences most people share. I want you to think about your own day. How many times have you looked at a screen since waking up this morning? Perhaps you checked your phone before getting out of bed. Maybe you watched videos while eating breakfast. You might have spent hours working on a computer. Even during short breaks, many people automatically reach for their phones without thinking. Technology has become so integrated into modern life that we often forget how much attention it demands. One expression that has become increasingly common is digital detox. A digital detox simply means taking a break from digital devices, especially smartphones, computers, and social media platforms. Some people disconnect for a few hours. Others choose an entire weekend without screens. The goal is usually the same. They want to reduce stress, improve focus, and reconnect with activities in the physical world. I remember a time when I decided to spend an entire Saturday without checking social media. At first, it felt strange. I kept reaching for my phone automatically, almost as if my hand had developed a habit of its own. During the first few hours, I felt slightly uncomfortable because I was so accustomed to constant updates and notifications. However, something interesting happened later in the day. My mind began to feel calmer. I noticed details around me that I normally ignored. I spent more time reading, walking, and simply enjoying quiet moments. Experiences like that have made me realize how powerful our digital habits can be. Many people do not intentionally spend large amounts of time online. Instead, they fall into routines. A quick glance at a notification becomes 10 minutes of scrolling. 10 minutes becomes 30. Before they know it, an hour has disappeared. This experience is so common that people around the world frequently discuss it. A useful phrase you can learn is screen time. Screen time refers to the amount of time spent looking at digital screens. For example, I might say, my screen time increased significantly during a busy work project. Or I could say, I'm trying to reduce my screen time before bed. These sentences sound natural because they reflect real situations that many people experience. Another important expression is information overload. Information overload happens when a person receives more information than they can comfortably process. In today's world, information arrives constantly. News updates appear every minute. Social media feeds never stop moving. Emails continue arriving throughout the day. Messages compete for attention. As a result, some people feel mentally exhausted even when they are not physically tired. I have experienced information overload many times. There have been days when I open my laptop intending to complete one simple task. Instead, I found myself reading emails, checking messages, reviewing notifications, and responding to various requests. After an hour, I realized I had been busy the entire time without actually accomplishing my original goal. That feeling can be frustrating because activity does not always equal productivity. When discussing modern lifestyles, another useful expression is being constantly connected. This phrase describes the reality of being reachable almost all the time through phones, messaging apps, and online platforms. Years ago, people could leave work and become temporarily unavailable. Today, many individuals remain connected long after office hours have ended. While this connectivity offers convenience, it can also create pressure. Imagine someone asks you about your relationship with technology. Instead of giving a short answer, you can apply the speaking techniques we have been developing. You might begin with the main idea. I use technology every day. Then add details. I rely on my phone and computer for work, communication, and entertainment. Next, include an emotion. Sometimes I appreciate how convenient technology is, but I also feel overwhelmed when I receive too many notifications. Finally, share an experience. Last month, I decided to limit my social media usage, and I noticed that I felt more focused and productive. This type of answer feels natural, detailed, and personal. Let's explore another useful phrase. Doom scrolling. This word describes the habit of continuously scrolling through negative news or upsetting content online. Many people have experienced this without realizing it. They intend to check one article, but then they continue reading more and more negative information. Eventually, they feel anxious, stressed, or emotionally drained. Understanding vocabulary like this helps you discuss modern life more accurately. Another expression worth learning is mental fatigue. Mental fatigue refers to feeling exhausted because of intense thinking, concentration, or information processing. Someone might say, after attending online meetings all day, I experienced mental fatigue. Or, constant multitasking often leaves me mentally exhausted. These phrases are especially relevant in professional environments where digital communication plays a major role. Now I would like you to imagine that someone asks, how much screen time do you have every day? Don't rush to answer. Think about your actual habits. Perhaps you spend several hours working on a computer. Maybe you watch videos in the evening. Maybe you use your phone throughout the day. Build your response step by step. Explain when you use technology, why you use it, and how you feel about it. For example, I might say, I spend a significant amount of time looking at screens each day because much of my work happens online. During the evening, I also enjoy watching educational videos and reading articles. While technology helps me stay informed and productive, I sometimes feel that I spend too much time connected to devices. Because of that, I try to take regular breaks and spend time outdoors whenever possible. Notice how the answer combines facts, emotions, and personal reflections. This approach creates richer communication and gives the listener a clearer understanding of your experiences. It also provides excellent fluency practice because it encourages longer responses. Let's talk about another common topic: productivity. Many people use technology to organize their schedules, manage tasks, and communicate efficiently. However, technology can also become a distraction. One moment you are working on an important assignment. The next moment you are checking messages, browsing websites, or watching videos. Finding a healthy balance is a challenge that many people discuss. A useful expression here is staying focused. For example, I might say, I turn off notifications when I need to stay focused. Another phrase is avoiding distractions. I try to avoid distractions by keeping my phone away from my desk while working. These expressions appear frequently in conversations about productivity and modern work habits. I have noticed that many successful people develop intentional digital habits. They decide when to check emails. They schedule breaks from screens. They create boundaries between work time and personal time. These habits help them maintain concentration and reduce stress. More importantly, they help them feel in control of technology rather than controlled by it. Consider your own experiences. Have you ever picked up your phone to do one thing and then forgotten why you picked it up in the first place? This happens because digital environments are designed to capture attention. Notifications, recommendations, and endless content streams constantly compete for our focus. Understanding this challenge gives you more vocabulary and ideas to discuss during conversations. Let's practice speaking about daily screen time. Imagine I ask you, do you think you spend too much time on your phone? A simple answer would be yes or no. A stronger answer would explain your reasoning. You might say, sometimes I think I spend too much time on my phone, especially during the evening. I often use it to read articles, watch videos, and communicate with friends. Although these activities are useful and enjoyable, I occasionally feel that they take time away from other important activities. For that reason, I have been trying to establish healthier habits. That response sounds natural because it reflects real thoughts and experiences. It also demonstrates the ability to discuss a contemporary topic in a thoughtful way. The more you practice discussing modern issues, the more comfortable you become participating in everyday conversations. Technology is not inherently good or bad. It is simply a tool. The impact depends largely on how we use it. Some people use technology to learn new skills, build businesses, maintain relationships, and improve their lives. Others struggle with distractions, information overload, and constant connectivity. Most people experience both sides to some degree. This balance creates interesting conversations because there is rarely a single correct answer. As you continue strengthening your English, pay attention to the topics that appear in your daily life. Technology, productivity, social media, focus, stress, and personal habits are all subjects that people discuss regularly. The more comfortable you become talking about these experiences, the more natural your English will feel. Language becomes truly powerful when it allows you to describe the realities of your own life, your challenges, your observations, and the choices you make each day. And when people begin reflecting on how they spend their time and energy, the conversation naturally shifts toward another important question: how can we take better care of ourselves and maintain a healthier, more balanced life? The way we spend our time often has a direct impact on how we feel. When our schedules become overwhelming, our energy levels tend to drop. When our habits become more balanced, we often feel stronger, more focused, and more motivated. This is why conversations about wellness have become increasingly common in everyday life. People talk about exercise, nutrition, sleep, stress management, and healthy routines because these subjects affect nearly everyone. Learning how to discuss wellness in English not only improves your fluency, but also gives you the vocabulary to talk about your own experiences and lifestyle choices. One of the most common topics in wellness conversations is energy. People constantly discuss whether they feel energized, exhausted, refreshed, or drained. These words appear frequently in daily conversations because energy influences everything we do. It affects our productivity at work, our mood at home, and even our ability to enjoy our hobbies. Understanding how to describe your energy levels can make your English sound more natural and expressive. For example, if someone asks me how I have been feeling recently, I might say, "I've been feeling more energetic lately because I've been paying closer attention to my daily habits." That sentence immediately opens the door to a longer conversation. The listener may ask what habits I changed. I can then explain my sleep schedule, exercise routine, or eating habits. One simple statement becomes an opportunity to practice speaking in a meaningful way. Food is another major topic in wellness discussions. Over the last several years, many people have become more interested in understanding what they eat and how different foods affect their bodies. You may have heard phrases such as clean eating, balanced diet, plant-based meals, or healthy nutrition. These expressions appear regularly in conversations, articles, podcasts, and social media discussions. Clean eating generally refers to choosing foods that are less processed and closer to their natural state. This does not mean eating perfectly all the time. Instead, it usually means focusing on fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and other nutritious foods while reducing heavily processed products. If someone asks about your eating habits, you might say, "I've been trying to eat more whole foods because they help me feel healthier and more energetic throughout the day." I remember a period when my schedule became extremely busy. I often skipped meals, relied on convenience foods, and drank too much coffee. At first, I thought I was saving time. However, after several weeks, I noticed that my energy levels were becoming inconsistent. Some days I felt productive in the morning, but completely exhausted by the afternoon. Eventually, I decided to make small changes rather than dramatic ones. I started preparing simple meals at home, drinking more water, and paying closer attention to my sleep. The improvements did not happen overnight, but over time, I began feeling more balanced. This type of personal experience is valuable in conversation because it combines facts with reflection. Instead of simply saying, "I eat healthy food," I can explain why I made changes and how those changes affected me. That additional context makes my response more interesting and more authentic. Another expression that appears frequently in wellness discussions is maintaining energy levels. People often want to know how to stay productive and focused throughout the day without feeling exhausted. Some individuals rely on exercise. Others focus on nutrition, hydration, or sleep. Many people discover that small daily habits create significant long-term results. Imagine a colleague asks, "How do you maintain your energy during a busy workday?" You could answer, "I try to maintain my energy by eating balanced meals, drinking enough water, and taking short breaks throughout the day. I've noticed that when I ignore these habits, my concentration decreases and I become less productive." This response sounds natural because it includes both practical actions and personal observations. Let's talk about plant-based diets. A plant-based diet focuses primarily on foods that come from plants, including vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, and whole grains. Some people adopt this lifestyle for health reasons. Others do it for environmental or ethical reasons. Regardless of the motivation, it has become a common topic in modern conversations. Suppose someone asks me whether I have ever tried a plant-based diet. I might say, "I've experimented with adding more plant-based meals to my routine. At first, I was curious about the potential health benefits. Over time, I discovered several meals that I genuinely enjoyed, and I noticed that I often felt lighter and more energetic afterward." Notice how this answer includes a reason, an experience, and a personal outcome. One thing I find fascinating about wellness conversations is that they are highly personal. Two people can follow completely different routines and still achieve positive results. One person might enjoy early morning workouts. Another may prefer exercising in the evening. Some individuals thrive on detailed schedules, while others prefer flexibility. These differences create engaging discussions because everyone has unique experiences to share. Sleep is another topic that deserves attention. In many cases, when people complain about low energy, the underlying issue is not nutrition or exercise. It is lack of sleep. A useful phrase here is getting enough rest. For example, I could say, "I've been trying to get enough rest because I perform much better when I'm well rested." This type of sentence appears frequently in everyday English. I have noticed that when I sleep well, many other healthy habits become easier. I make better food choices. I feel more motivated to exercise. I concentrate more effectively. On the other hand, when I am sleep-deprived, even simple tasks can feel more difficult. This relationship between sleep and energy is something many people can relate to, making it an excellent conversation topic. Stress management is also closely connected to wellness. Modern life can be demanding. Work responsibilities, family obligations, financial concerns, and countless other factors can create stress. Because of this, people often discuss techniques for maintaining balance. Some practice meditation. Others enjoy walking, reading, exercising, or spending time in nature. If someone asks how I manage stress, I might say, "When I start feeling overwhelmed, I try to step away from my screen and take a short walk. Fresh air and movement usually help me clear my mind and regain focus." This response sounds realistic because it reflects a practical strategy rather than an abstract idea. Now, let's imagine a workplace conversation. A colleague notices that you seem more energetic than usual and asks what changed. This is a perfect opportunity to practice fluent English. You might respond, "Recently, I've been paying more attention to my health. I've been eating more balanced meals, drinking more water, and going to bed earlier. At first, the changes felt small, but after a few weeks I noticed a significant improvement in my energy levels." This answer naturally encourages further discussion. One of the most useful speaking skills is learning how to compare your past and present situations. Comparisons allow you to describe growth, change, and personal development. For example, I could say, "A year ago, I often felt tired by the middle of the afternoon. Now I have more consistent energy because I've developed healthier habits." This type of comparison adds depth to your communication and makes your stories more engaging. Let's practice another scenario. Imagine you are talking with a coworker during a lunch break. The coworker asks whether you have changed your diet recently. Instead of giving a short answer, expand your response. You could say, "Yes, I've been making some adjustments. I've started eating more vegetables and preparing meals at home instead of relying on takeout. I wanted to improve my overall health, and I've noticed that I feel more energetic during the day." The transition was challenging at first, but it became easier once I established a routine. Notice how many speaking opportunities exist within a simple topic. You can discuss goals, challenges, results, emotions, and future plans. This is one reason wellness conversations are so valuable for language learners. They allow you to practice a wide range of vocabulary while talking about experiences that feel relevant and personal. Another useful phrase is healthy lifestyle. This expression is broad enough to include nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress management, and other habits. Someone might ask, "What does a healthy lifestyle mean to you?" There is no single correct answer. You can describe your own perspective and experiences. Perhaps you believe balance is more important than perfection. Maybe you focus on consistency rather than strict rules. These opinions create meaningful conversations. As your confidence grows, try discussing not only what you do, but also why you do it. The reasons behind your choices often reveal the most interesting parts of a conversation. Maybe you exercise because it improves your mood. Maybe you cook at home because it helps you feel more in control of your nutrition. Maybe you prioritize sleep because you value productivity and mental clarity. These explanations add personality to your speech. The beauty of wellness as a conversation topic is that it connects directly to everyday life. Everyone has habits. Everyone experiences changes in energy. Everyone makes choices about food, rest, and self-care. Because these experiences are universal, they provide endless opportunities for speaking practice. The more you learn to describe your routines, challenges, improvements, and observations, the more naturally your English begins to flow. And as people become more confident in themselves, more aware of their habits, and more comfortable expressing their experiences, they often find themselves engaging more openly with the people around them, whether at work, in cafes, or in the many shared spaces where everyday conversations begin. One of the most rewarding moments in language learning happens when English stops feeling like a subject and starts feeling like a tool. A tool allows you to connect with people, solve problems, exchange ideas, and navigate everyday situations with confidence. This is especially true in social environments where conversations happen naturally and often without preparation. You may know the vocabulary. You may understand grammar. Yet when a real person suddenly speaks to you, the situation can feel very different. This is why learning to communicate comfortably in shared spaces is such an important step in becoming fluent. Imagine walking into a busy cafe on a weekday morning. Some people are working on laptops. Others are meeting friends. A few are taking phone calls. The atmosphere is relaxed but active. In places like this, conversations often begin unexpectedly. Someone may ask if a nearby chair is available. A person might comment on the weather. A stranger may need help finding an electrical outlet. These interactions are usually short, simple, and friendly, yet they provide valuable opportunities to practice speaking English. I remember visiting a cafe where nearly every table was occupied. After finding a small seat near the window, I noticed someone standing nearby looking for a place to sit. After a moment, they politely asked, "Is this seat taken?" It was a simple question, but it started a conversation that lasted almost 30 minutes. We talked about work, travel, books, and favorite coffee shops. What began as a brief exchange became a meaningful interaction. Many learners imagine that fluent speakers always discuss deep or complicated topics. In reality, most conversations begin with something very ordinary. A simple observation, a polite question, a shared situation. Knowing how to handle these moments naturally can make a tremendous difference in your confidence. One useful skill is learning how to break the ice. Breaking the ice means starting a conversation in a friendly and comfortable way. For example, if you're sitting next to someone in a co-working space, you might say, "Have you worked here before?" Or, "This place seems busier than usual today." These questions are easy to answer and create opportunities for further discussion. Let's imagine that I am working in a co-working space. I notice someone sitting nearby who seems approachable. Instead of overthinking, I might simply say, "Hi, do you come here often?" If they answer positively, I can follow up with another question. Perhaps I ask what kind of work they do or how they discovered the space. Notice that I do not need advanced vocabulary. Curiosity and friendliness are often more important than perfect language. Another common situation involves asking for help. Many learners hesitate because they fear bothering other people. However, polite requests are a normal part of everyday communication. Imagine that I need the Wi-Fi password. I could say, "Excuse me, do you happen to know the Wi-Fi password?" This question is polite, direct, and natural. Most people would be happy to help. Suppose I am working on my laptop and suddenly realize that my battery is almost dead. I notice that someone nearby is sitting close to an electrical outlet. A polite request might sound like this. "Excuse me, would you mind if I use that outlet for a few minutes?" Again, the language is simple, but the interaction helps build confidence. One reason these situations are valuable for language learners is that they involve real communication rather than memorized dialogues. You never know exactly how the other person will respond. This unpredictability encourages flexible thinking. Instead of repeating prepared sentences, you learn to react naturally. Let's talk about another common scenario. Borrowing something. Imagine that I forgot my pen during a meeting or while working in a shared space. A natural way to ask for help would be, "I'm sorry to bother you, but could I borrow a pen for a moment?" Most people would understand immediately. If they agree, I can thank them and perhaps continue the conversation afterward. These small interactions may seem insignificant, but they create valuable speaking opportunities. Every time you ask a question, respond to someone, or express gratitude, you strengthen your communication skills. Confidence grows through repetition. The more often you engage in these moments, the less intimidating they become. Of course, not every social interaction is completely smooth. Sometimes minor problems occur, and we need to communicate them politely. Imagine that you are working in a cafe, and the internet connection suddenly becomes unstable. You may need to speak with an employee. Instead of sounding frustrated, you can remain calm and professional. For example, I might say, "Excuse me, I think the Wi-Fi connection may be having some issues. Would it be possible to check whether everything is working correctly?" This approach focuses on solving the problem rather than expressing anger. Polite communication is often more effective because it encourages cooperation. Now imagine that I am participating in an online meeting from a co-working space and the connection keeps dropping. After reconnecting several times, I might explain the situation by saying, "I apologize for the interruptions. The network connection seems unstable today." This statement sounds professional and helps others understand what is happening. A useful phrase in situations like these is experiencing technical difficulties. For example, "I'm experiencing some technical difficulties at the moment." This expression appears frequently in both professional and casual conversations. Learning phrases like this helps you navigate modern environments more confidently. Let's consider another social situation. Someone notices the book I am reading and asks whether I would recommend it. This is a wonderful opportunity to practice speaking. Instead of answering with a simple yes or no, I can expand my response. I might say, yes, I would recommend it. The book explores some interesting ideas about productivity and personal growth. I've only read half of it so far, but I've already found several concepts that I want to apply in my own life. Notice how easy it is to continue the conversation when you provide details. The other person may ask follow-up questions. They might share their own recommendations. A short interaction gradually develops into a longer exchange. Many learners worry about making mistakes during conversations with strangers. I completely understand that concern. However, most people are far more interested in understanding your message than evaluating your grammar. Communication is a shared activity. People generally appreciate effort, sincerity, and friendliness. I have had conversations with people from many different backgrounds and language levels. Rarely did anyone expect perfection. Instead, they responded positively when the conversation felt genuine. This is an important lesson. Fluency is not about speaking flawlessly. It is about connecting effectively. Let's imagine another realistic situation. You arrive at a co-working space and discover that someone is sitting in the seat you usually use. This is not a major problem, but it may require a brief conversation. You could simply choose another seat. Alternatively, if there is a specific reason you need that location, you might politely explain the situation. The ability to communicate calmly and respectfully helps prevent misunderstandings. Social confidence often develops through these everyday moments, not through dramatic speeches, not through complicated debates, through ordinary conversations, asking questions, sharing opinions, solving small problems, making connections. Each interaction strengthens your ability to think and respond in English. Another useful habit is showing interest in other people. Many learners focus entirely on what they want to say. However, strong communicators also ask thoughtful questions. If someone tells me they recently started a new job, I might ask how they are enjoying it. If someone mentions a hobby, I might ask how they became interested in it. Questions keep conversations moving and reduce pressure because they encourage the other person to participate. Imagine you are sitting in a cafe and notice someone working on an interesting project. After a suitable moment, you might say, "That looks interesting. What are you working on?" This simple question could lead to a fascinating conversation. Opportunities like these exist everywhere if we remain open and curious. Of course, not every interaction becomes a friendship or a long discussion. Sometimes a conversation lasts only a few minutes. That is perfectly fine. The goal is not to impress people. The goal is to become comfortable communicating in a variety of situations. Every exchange, no matter how brief, contributes to your growth. As your confidence increases, you may notice something remarkable. Situations that once felt intimidating begin to feel normal. Asking for information becomes easier. Meeting new people feels less stressful. Solving unexpected problems becomes more manageable. English starts functioning as a practical tool rather than a classroom subject. The environments around us provide endless opportunities for practice. Cafes, co-working spaces, libraries, airports, waiting rooms, and countless other shared spaces bring people together every day. Within these environments, conversations emerge naturally. Sometimes they begin with a question, sometimes with a problem, sometimes with a simple observation. Regardless of how they start, each interaction offers a chance to strengthen communication skills and build genuine human connections. And as those connections become more frequent, people often discover that communication is not only about being friendly and approachable, but also about knowing how to express their own needs, preferences, and limits with clarity and confidence when situations require it. One of the most important communication skills a person can develop is the ability to express boundaries clearly and respectfully. Many people assume that fluency means being able to say more, speak faster, or participate in longer conversations. While those abilities are valuable, true confidence often reveals itself in a different way. It appears when you can communicate your needs honestly, protect your time when necessary, and express disagreement without creating unnecessary conflict. These situations are common in both personal and professional life, which is why learning how to handle them in English can have a significant impact on your communication skills. For many learners, saying yes feels easier than saying no. Agreeing often seems safer. It avoids tension. It keeps conversations moving smoothly. However, constantly saying yes can create problems. You may take on responsibilities you cannot manage. You may commit to activities you do not have time for. You may feel overwhelmed, stressed, or frustrated. Effective communication is not only about cooperation. It is also about balance. I remember a period when I struggled with this myself. Whenever someone asked for help, I immediately agreed. Whenever additional work appeared, I accepted it. At first, I believed this behavior made me helpful and dependable. Eventually, I realized that I was stretching myself too thin. My schedule became crowded. My energy decreased. Most importantly, I began feeling resentment toward commitments that I had voluntarily accepted. That experience taught me an important lesson. Protecting your boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary. The challenge is that many people worry about sounding rude when they decline a request. Fortunately, there is a simple structure that can help. I like to think of it as a three-step approach. First, acknowledge the request respectfully. Second, provide a clear and honest reason. Third, offer an alternative if possible. This structure allows you to communicate your boundaries while maintaining positive relationships. Let's imagine a workplace situation. A supervisor approaches me late in the afternoon and asks whether I can stay several hours after work to complete an additional task. Perhaps I already have important plans. Perhaps I need time to rest. My first reaction might be discomfort because I do not want to disappoint anyone. However, I can respond professionally. For example, I might say, "I appreciate you thinking of me for this project. Unfortunately, I already have commitments this evening that I can't reschedule. However, I'd be happy to help first thing tomorrow morning." Notice what happens here. I do not ignore the request. I do not sound defensive. I acknowledge it respectfully, explain my situation, and suggest an alternative solution. This approach works because it focuses on communication rather than rejection. Many people hear the word no and immediately associate it with negativity. In reality, a respectful decline can strengthen professional relationships because it demonstrates honesty and reliability. When you communicate clearly, people know what to expect from you. Let's examine another example. Imagine a colleague asks whether you can take responsibility for part of their workload because they are feeling overwhelmed. You genuinely want to help, but your own schedule is already full. Instead of immediately agreeing and creating additional stress for yourself, you might respond thoughtfully. You could say, "I understand that you're dealing with a lot right now. Unfortunately, my workload is also quite heavy this week, and I wouldn't be able to give the task the attention it deserves. Perhaps we could discuss other ways to solve the problem together." This response demonstrates empathy while still protecting your own capacity. Empathy plays an important role in these conversations. People often respond positively when they feel understood. Even if you cannot fulfill a request, acknowledging the other person's situation helps maintain goodwill. A simple phrase such as, "I understand," "I appreciate that," or "I can see why that's important" can make a significant difference. Let's consider a social situation. Imagine that a friend invites you to an event, but you're exhausted and need some personal time. Many people feel guilty declining invitations, especially when they care about the person making the request. However, rest is important. Protecting your energy is a valid reason. A natural response might be, "Thank you for inviting me. It sounds like a great event, but I think I need a quiet evening to recharge. I've had a very busy week. Let's plan something together another time." This answer communicates appreciation, honesty, and continued interest in the relationship. Notice that effective boundary setting does not require complicated vocabulary. It relies on clarity, respect, and confidence. In fact, simple language is often the most effective. The goal is not to justify yourself endlessly. The goal is to communicate your position in a calm and understandable way. Another important skill is expressing disagreement professionally. Many people avoid disagreement because they fear conflict. However, healthy disagreement is a normal part of communication. Different perspectives often lead to better ideas, stronger decisions, and more thoughtful discussions. Suppose I am participating in a meeting and someone proposes a solution that I do not believe will work effectively. Instead of saying, "That's a bad idea," I can express my opinion more constructively. I might say, "I understand the reasoning behind that approach. However, I have some concerns about the potential challenges. Perhaps we could also consider another option." This response keeps the discussion productive while allowing me to share my perspective. A useful phrase in professional settings is, "I see your point, but..." This structure acknowledges the other person's perspective before introducing your own. For example, "I see your point, but I think there may be a more efficient way to handle the situation." This approach sounds collaborative rather than confrontational. Confidence often grows when people realize they do not need to choose between honesty and kindness. The two can exist together. You can be direct without being rude. You can be respectful without sacrificing your own needs. You can disagree without damaging relationships. These skills become easier with practice. I have noticed that many language learners focus heavily on grammar and pronunciation while overlooking communication strategies. Yet strategies like boundary setting, active listening, and respectful disagreement are incredibly valuable. They help you navigate real-life situations where emotions, expectations, and relationships are involved. Let's imagine another workplace scenario. A manager asks whether you can complete an urgent task by the end of the day. After reviewing the project, you realize that the deadline is unrealistic. Instead of agreeing and risking disappointment later, you can communicate honestly. You might say, "I understand that this task is a priority. Based on the amount of work involved, I'm concerned that completing it by the end of the day may affect the quality. Would it be possible to discuss a different timeline?" This response demonstrates responsibility because you are addressing the issue proactively. People sometimes assume that confident communicators never feel nervous. In reality, confidence is not the absence of nervousness. It is the ability to communicate effectively despite feeling uncomfortable. The first few times you set a boundary or express disagreement, you may feel anxious. That is perfectly normal. Over time, these conversations become easier. One helpful mindset is remembering that most people respect clarity. Unclear communication often creates more problems than honest communication. If you agree to something you cannot realistically do, disappointment becomes likely. If you express your limitations early, solutions can be found more easily. Let's practice a simple example. Imagine someone asks you to help with a project this weekend, but you already have personal plans. Instead of immediately apologizing repeatedly or creating an elaborate excuse, you could say, "Thank you for asking. Unfortunately, I already have plans this weekend that I can't change." I hope the project goes well, and I'd be happy to help another time if needed. This answer is clear, respectful, and confident. Another useful phrase is, I wish I could, but, for example, I wish I could help, but my schedule is already full this week. This structure communicates goodwill while maintaining your boundary. It shows that your refusal is based on circumstances rather than lack of concern. As you continue developing your English, pay attention to these moments in daily life. Notice when people make requests. Notice how others accept, decline, negotiate, and compromise. Observe the language they use. Communication is not only about vocabulary. It is also about understanding human interaction. The ability to set boundaries effectively often leads to stronger relationships because it creates trust. People know where you stand. They understand your limitations. They recognize that your agreements are meaningful because you do not say yes to everything automatically. This reliability becomes one of the foundations of professional and personal credibility. Perhaps most importantly, boundary setting encourages self-respect. When you communicate your needs honestly, you acknowledge that your time, energy, and priorities matter. This does not mean ignoring the needs of others. It means finding a healthy balance between supporting people and maintaining your own well-being. And once individuals become comfortable expressing their views, defending their positions, and communicating with confidence, conversations naturally begin expanding beyond personal situations into larger questions about society, technology, change, and the future that all of us are helping to shape. Some conversations stay close to our daily lives. We talk about work, habits, routines, relationships, and personal goals. Other conversations invite us to step back and look at broader changes taking place around the world. These discussions challenge us to analyze trends, compare different perspectives, and consider possibilities that may affect society for years to come. One of the most fascinating topics in this category is artificial intelligence, often referred to simply as AI. No matter where you live, chances are you have already encountered AI in some form. It appears in search engines, navigation apps, recommendation systems, customer service tools, translation software, and countless other technologies. Many people interact with AI every day without even thinking about it. As a result, conversations about AI have become increasingly common in workplaces, schools, businesses, and social settings. I find this topic especially interesting because it rarely produces simple answers. Whenever people discuss AI, different opinions emerge. Some individuals feel excited about its potential. Others feel concerned about its impact. Many people hold both feelings at the same time. This makes AI an excellent subject for practicing advanced English because it encourages balanced thinking rather than one-sided arguments. When discussing complex topics, one useful habit is organizing your thoughts clearly. Instead of immediately choosing a side, try examining multiple perspectives. This approach demonstrates critical thinking and helps your speech sound more sophisticated. Useful transition phrases can help guide your listener through your reasoning. For example, I might begin by saying, from my perspective, artificial intelligence has the potential to improve many aspects of daily life. This statement introduces my viewpoint without suggesting that it is the only valid opinion. Next, I might add, at the same time, there are legitimate concerns that deserve careful consideration. Notice how this language creates space for a balanced discussion. One of the strongest arguments in favor of AI is efficiency. Many repetitive tasks can now be completed more quickly with technological assistance. Businesses use AI to analyze data, automate routine processes, and improve customer experiences. Medical professionals use advanced systems to support research and diagnosis. Students use digital tools to access information more easily. These applications demonstrate how technology can increase productivity and save time. I have personally experienced some of these benefits. Tasks that once required hours of manual work can sometimes be completed much faster with the help of intelligent software. This efficiency allows people to focus on more creative, strategic, or meaningful activities. In many situations, AI acts as a tool that enhances human capabilities rather than replacing them. Another advantage is accessibility. Technology has made information available to more people than ever before. Someone living in a remote area can access educational resources, communicate with experts, and learn new skills online. Translation tools help bridge language barriers. Assistive technologies support individuals with disabilities. These developments illustrate how innovation can create opportunities that were previously unavailable. However, every technological advancement brings new challenges. One concern frequently discussed is job displacement. Some people worry that as AI becomes more capable, certain occupations may disappear. This concern is understandable because history shows that technological change often transforms labor markets. For example, tasks that involve repetitive procedures are often easier to automate. Certain administrative functions, data entry roles, and routine processes may require fewer human workers in the future. As a result, employees in affected industries may need to adapt by learning new skills. This possibility creates uncertainty, especially for individuals whose careers are closely connected to tasks that can be automated. When discussing this issue, it is important to avoid extreme conclusions. A common question is, will AI replace humans? Many people answer either yes or no. In reality, the situation is usually more complex. Instead of replacing all human work, AI is more likely to change the nature of many jobs. Some responsibilities may disappear, while new opportunities emerge. If someone asked me whether AI will replace humans, I would probably respond like this. From my perspective, AI will replace certain tasks rather than completely replacing people. Many jobs involve creativity, emotional intelligence, leadership, and complex decision-making. These qualities remain difficult to replicate fully. However, individuals who adapt and continue learning will likely be better prepared for future changes. Notice how this answer avoids absolute statements. It acknowledges potential risks while also recognizing human strengths. Balanced reasoning often sounds more persuasive because it reflects the complexity of real-world issues. Another topic frequently discussed is education. Some people believe AI can make learning more personalized and effective. Students may receive immediate feedback, customized lessons, and additional support when studying difficult subjects. These benefits could improve educational outcomes for many learners. Conversely, others worry that excessive reliance on technology might reduce critical thinking skills. If people become accustomed to receiving instant answers, they may spend less time developing problem-solving abilities independently. This concern highlights the importance of using technology thoughtfully rather than passively. A useful transition word here is conversely. For example, I might say, AI can improve access to educational resources. Conversely, it may also create challenges if students become overly dependent on automated assistants. Transition phrases like this help structure arguments and make your speech easier to follow. Ethics is another important aspect of the conversation. As AI systems become more powerful, questions about privacy, fairness, and accountability become increasingly relevant. Who is responsible when an automated system makes a mistake? How should personal data be protected? How can society ensure that technological benefits are distributed fairly? These questions do not have simple answers, but they are essential topics for discussion. One reason I enjoy conversations about AI is that they encourage curiosity. Nobody can predict the future with complete certainty. We can analyze trends, examine evidence, and make educated guesses, but uncertainty remains. This uncertainty creates space for thoughtful dialogue rather than rigid conclusions. Imagine that you are participating in a professional discussion about the future of work. Someone argues that AI will eliminate millions of jobs. Another person claims that AI will create more opportunities than it removes. Instead of choosing one side immediately, you might respond thoughtfully. You could say, I think both perspectives contain some truth. Certain jobs may become less common as automation increases. However, technological innovation has historically created new industries and career paths. The key challenge may be helping workers adapt to changing demands. This response demonstrates nuance and analytical thinking. Another valuable phrase is, in the grand scheme of things. This expression helps introduce a broader perspective. For example, in the grand scheme of things, technological progress has often transformed society in ways that initially seemed disruptive, but eventually created new opportunities. This type of language makes your argument sound more mature and reflective. Let's consider creativity. Some people argue that creativity is one of humanity's greatest strengths. Artists, writers, musicians, designers, and innovators contribute ideas that shape culture and society. While AI can generate content, many people believe that human creativity involves emotional experiences, personal meaning, and cultural understanding that remain uniquely valuable. At the same time, others view AI as a creative partner rather than a competitor. They use technology to generate ideas, explore possibilities, and accelerate certain parts of the creative process. In this perspective, AI becomes a tool that expands human potential instead of limiting it. These contrasting viewpoints illustrate an important communication skill. Strong communicators can explore opposing arguments without becoming defensive. They listen carefully, evaluate evidence, and express their opinions respectfully. This ability is especially valuable when discussing controversial topics. I often encourage learners to practice speaking about issues that do not have obvious answers. Topics like AI, environmental sustainability, remote work, and technological innovation require deeper thinking. They encourage you to explain your reasoning, support your opinions, and respond to alternative perspectives. These skills strengthen both language ability and critical thinking. Let's imagine that someone asks you, do you think AI is good or bad for society? Rather than giving a simple answer, try expanding your response. You might say, I believe AI offers many benefits, particularly in areas such as healthcare, education, and productivity. However, I also think society must address challenges related to employment, privacy, and ethical decision-making. The overall impact will depend largely on how responsibly the technology is developed and used. This answer demonstrates balance and complexity. As conversations become more advanced, people often discover that language serves a deeper purpose than exchanging information. Language allows us to explore ideas, question assumptions, and imagine different futures. The ability to discuss complex subjects confidently is a sign of growing fluency because it requires organization, reasoning, and self-expression. Perhaps the most interesting aspect of AI is that it reflects something about humanity itself. When we discuss intelligence, creativity, work, and innovation, we are also discussing our own values and aspirations. We are asking what skills matter most. We are considering how society should evolve. We are reflecting on what it means to contribute meaningfully in a rapidly changing world. And when people begin exploring these larger questions, they often discover that facts and arguments alone are not always enough, because the ideas that stay with us the longest are usually carried not by statistics or debates, but by stories that connect experiences, emotions, and lessons into something memorable. People often remember stories far longer than they remember facts. A person may forget a statistic, a definition, or even a detailed explanation, but a meaningful story can stay in their mind for years. Stories have a unique ability to capture attention because they combine information with emotion. They allow listeners to see events unfold, imagine situations, and connect with experiences on a personal level. This is one reason storytelling is such a powerful communication skill. Whether you are speaking with friends, giving a presentation, attending an interview, or simply sharing an experience, the ability to tell a compelling story can make your English far more engaging. I used to think storytelling was something only professional speakers, authors, or entertainers needed to learn. Over time, I realized that storytelling is actually part of everyday communication. Every time we describe a vacation, explain a mistake, talk about a challenge, or share an unexpected event, we are telling a story. The difference between a forgettable story and a memorable one often comes down to structure. Many learners struggle with storytelling because they jump from one detail to another without a clear sequence. They mention the ending before the beginning. They skip important context. They introduce too many unrelated details. As a result, listeners have difficulty following what happened. Fortunately, there is a simple framework that can help organize almost any story. I like to think of storytelling as a journey with 5 stages. First comes the context. Second comes the inciting incident. Third comes the climax. Fourth comes the resolution. Fifth comes the takeaway. When these elements are connected smoothly, even an ordinary experience can become interesting. Let's begin with context. The context answers basic questions. Where were you? When did the event happen?
Who was involved?
What was the situation before anything unusual occurred? The purpose of context is to help listeners understand the setting. Imagine I am telling a story about a travel experience. I might begin like this. A few years ago, I decided to take a short trip to a city I had never visited before. I had been working hard for several months and wanted a brief escape. Everything seemed perfectly organized. I had my tickets, my hotel reservation, and a detailed plan for the weekend. These sentences establish the background and prepare listeners for what comes next. After the context comes the inciting incident. This is the moment when something changes. It introduces the problem, surprise, or challenge that drives the story forward. Without an inciting incident, there is no real story because nothing unexpected happens. Continuing the example, I might say, when I arrived at the airport, I discovered that my flight had been delayed for several hours. At first, I wasn't too concerned because delays occasionally happen. However, as the hours passed, the situation became more complicated. Eventually, I learned that the delay would cause me to miss an important connection. Now the story has momentum because a challenge has appeared. The next stage is the climax. This is the most intense or dramatic part of the story. It is the moment when uncertainty reaches its highest point. The listener wants to know what will happen next. In my travel story, the climax might sound like this. After rushing through multiple terminals and speaking with several airline employees, I realized that there were no available flights until the following day. My hotel reservation was at risk, my schedule was falling apart, and I was standing in a crowded airport feeling completely frustrated. For a moment, I honestly had no idea what to do. Notice how the emotional intensity increases. The listener becomes curious about the outcome. This is what makes stories engaging. People naturally want resolution. The fourth stage is the resolution. This is where the problem begins to unfold and a solution appears. The tension decreases, and the listener discovers how the situation ended. I might continue by saying, fortunately, one airline employee took extra time to help me explore alternative options. After several phone calls and a bit of luck, She found a different route that allowed me to reach my destination later that evening. The journey was longer than expected, but I eventually arrived safely. Finally, we reached the takeaway. This is the lesson, reflection, or insight gained from experience. The takeaway transforms a sequence of events into something meaningful. I could conclude by saying, that experience taught me the importance of staying calm when plans change unexpectedly. Stressing about the situation didn't solve anything. Patience and flexibility ultimately helped me find a solution. This final reflection gives the story purpose beyond simple entertainment. One reason storytelling improves fluency is that stories naturally encourage longer speech. Instead of producing isolated sentences, you connect events into a sequence. One idea leads to another. The structure guides your thinking and reduces the pressure of inventing new topics constantly. Let's consider another example. This time, instead of a travel mishap, imagine a personal mistake. Many people hesitate to talk about mistakes because they feel uncomfortable. However, mistakes often create excellent stories because they involve lessons and growth. I remember an occasion when I accidentally sent an unfinished document to a group of people. At the time, I was managing several tasks simultaneously and believed I had attached the final version. Unfortunately, I had attached an earlier draft containing notes and incomplete sections. The context is simple. I was working on an important project. The inciting incident occurred when I sent the wrong file. The climax arrived when I realized my mistake and saw that several recipients had already opened the document. My immediate reaction was embarrassment. I imagined all kinds of negative consequences. The resolution came when I quickly acknowledged the error and sent the correct version along with a brief explanation. Most people were understanding because mistakes happen to everyone. The takeaway was that rushing often creates problems that careful attention could prevent. Stories like this resonate because they feel human. Almost everyone has experienced embarrassment, frustration, disappointment, relief, or surprise. These emotions help listeners connect with the speaker. An important storytelling skill is describing emotions as events unfold. Instead of simply listing actions, explain how you felt during different stages of the story. For example, rather than saying, "I missed my flight," you could say, "When I saw the departure board, my stomach dropped because I immediately realized I had missed the flight." The second version creates a stronger image and emotional connection. Sensory details can also make stories more vivid. Describe what you saw, heard, or noticed. For instance, instead of saying, "The airport was crowded," you might say, "People were rushing in every direction. Announcements echoed through the terminal, and every seat seemed occupied." Small details help listeners imagine the scene. Another useful technique is chronological transitions. These words guide listeners through the sequence of events. Examples include first, then, after that, shortly afterward, meanwhile, eventually, finally, and in the end. Using these transitions makes your story easier to follow. Imagine someone asks about a memorable experience from your life. Rather than answering with a few disconnected facts, you can use the storytelling structure. Start with context. Introduce the challenge. Build tension. Resolve the situation. End with a lesson. This framework works for travel experiences, workplace situations, family events, academic challenges, and countless other topics. One thing I particularly enjoy about storytelling is that it allows personality to emerge naturally. Facts tell people what happened. Stories reveal how you think, what you value, and how you respond to challenges. Two people can experience the same event and tell completely different stories because they focus on different details and lessons. This is why storytelling often leaves a stronger impression than argumentation. During a debate, People may analyze evidence and compare viewpoints. During a story, people experience events alongside the speaker. They imagine the uncertainty, the excitement, the disappointment, or the relief. That emotional journey creates a deeper connection. As your confidence grows, challenge yourself to tell stories from different areas of your life. Describe a time you learned something important. Share a memorable trip. Explain a mistake that taught you a valuable lesson. Talk about an unexpected opportunity. Every story becomes a chance to practice vocabulary, structure, emotional expression, and fluency. Don't worry about making your stories dramatic. Most effective stories are built from ordinary experiences. A missed train, a misunderstanding, a difficult decision, a surprising conversation. What matters is not the size of the event. What matters is how you communicate it. A simple experience told well can be far more engaging than an extraordinary experience told poorly. The more stories you tell, the more comfortable you become organizing your thoughts in real time. You stop focusing on individual sentences and begin thinking in larger patterns. Context leads to challenge. Challenge leads to action. Action leads to outcome. Outcome leads to reflection. This flow creates smoother and more natural communication. Over time, storytelling becomes more than a speaking exercise. It becomes a way of sharing experiences, building relationships, and helping others understand your perspective. It transforms language from a collection of words into a living narrative that carries meaning, emotion, and human connection. And after developing the ability to think through situations, explain ideas, defend opinions, and tell complete stories, there comes a moment when preparation itself starts to disappear, leaving only your instincts, your creativity, and your ability to keep speaking when your mind has no time to plan ahead. There comes a moment in language learning when preparation is no longer the center of attention. Instead of carefully planning each sentence, you begin to rely on instinct, rhythm, and flow. Words appear more naturally, ideas connect more quickly, and pauses become shorter. This is not because the language has become simpler, but because the brain has learned to process meaning without constant translation. At this stage, speaking feels less like solving a problem and more like moving through a familiar path. Many learners underestimate how powerful this shift can be. They spend years focusing on accuracy, memorizing rules, and correcting mistakes, but fluency begins to emerge only when the mind stops treating every sentence as a construction project. Instead, it starts recognizing patterns. It begins to predict what comes next. It connects ideas automatically. This is the point where thinking in English slowly replaces translating from your native language. One of the most effective ways to reach this stage is through continuous speaking challenges. Instead of stopping after every sentence to check grammar or search for the perfect word, you allow yourself to keep going. You accept small imperfections. You prioritize flow over perfection. At first, this feels uncomfortable because the brain is used to control. But over time, the discomfort fades and speaking becomes smoother. Imagine receiving 3 random words completely unrelated to each other. For example, window, decision, and ocean. At first, these words seem disconnected. There is no obvious story linking them together. However, the goal is not logic in a strict sense. The goal is connection. The goal is to build a bridge between ideas using language as the tool. You begin speaking immediately, without planning too much, and allow the story to form as you continue. You might start by describing a simple scene near a window. Then you introduce a decision that changes the direction of your thoughts. Then you expand into an emotional reflection connected to the ocean, symbolizing depth, distance, or calmness. The content itself is less important than the act of continuous expression. What matters is that your brain learns to generate language in real time. This type of exercise trains something deeper than vocabulary. It trains mental flexibility. Life rarely gives us prepared scripts. Conversations shift unexpectedly. Topics change without warning. Someone asks a question you did not anticipate. A new idea appears in the middle of a discussion. If your mind is trained to adapt quickly, you respond with ease instead of hesitation. Another important aspect of this stage is consistency. Many learners expect dramatic improvement in a short period of time, but fluency is built through repetition. Small daily practice sessions are more effective than occasional long study sessions. Even a few minutes of spontaneous speaking each day can gradually reshape how your brain processes language. The key is continuity, not intensity. When you speak consistently, without stopping to overanalyze every sentence, something interesting begins to happen. Your internal translator weakens. Instead of forming sentences in your native language first, ideas start appearing directly in English. At first, this transition is partial. You may still think in two languages at the same time. But gradually, English becomes the primary medium for expression. This change is often subtle. You may notice that you no longer search for words as often as before. You may find yourself speaking longer sentences without planning them. You may realize that pauses feel more natural rather than forced. These are signs that fluency is developing beneath conscious effort. At this point, mistakes are no longer obstacles. They become part of the process. Instead of stopping when something is unclear, you continue speaking and adjust along the way. This resilience is essential for real communication. In everyday life, conversations do not pause for correction. They continue moving forward. The ability to stay engaged despite uncertainty is what creates real confidence. A useful mindset during this stage is to treat English as a living system rather than a fixed set of rules. In real conversations, language is flexible. It adapts to context, emotion, and intention. People simplify sentences when they are in a hurry. They expand ideas when they are excited. They adjust tone depending on the listener. Learning to mirror this flexibility helps your speech become more natural. Consider how people actually communicate in real situations. They rarely speak in perfect grammar structures. Instead, they rely on fragments, emphasis, repetition, and simplification. For example, someone might say, "Really tired today, long day at work, but finished everything." Although this is not a textbook sentence, it is completely understandable. It carries meaning efficiently. This is what natural fluency looks like. As you practice more spontaneous speaking, you begin to notice patterns in your own thinking. You discover which types of topics are easier for you to express. You become aware of where you hesitate. You learn which emotions are easier to describe and which ones require more vocabulary. This self-awareness is extremely valuable because it allows you to target your improvement more effectively. Another powerful technique is internal narration. Instead of thinking in silence using your native language, you begin describing your surroundings in English inside your mind. You might look at a street and think about what is happening there in English. You might describe your actions while walking, eating, or working. This habit slowly transforms passive knowledge into active ability. Over time, this internal narration reduces the gap between thought and speech. When you eventually speak aloud, the words feel familiar because they have already been used internally. This reduces hesitation and increases confidence. Speaking becomes an extension of thinking rather than a separate process. One of the final stages of fluency development is comfort with unpredictability. In real conversations, you cannot control every topic. You cannot predict every question. You cannot prepare every answer. Instead, you must rely on adaptability. This includes paraphrasing when you forget a word, rephrasing when a sentence becomes unclear, and continuing smoothly when you make a mistake. For example, if you cannot remember a specific word, you do not stop speaking. You describe the idea in a different way. You find another path to the same meaning. This ability is one of the strongest indicators of real fluency. It shows that communication is no longer dependent on perfect vocabulary, but on flexible thinking. At this stage, speaking English becomes more like storytelling, problem-solving, and spontaneous creation combined. You are not reciting memorized content. You are building meaning in real time. Each sentence is shaped by context, emotion, and intention. The language becomes a tool for expression rather than a subject of study. It is important to understand that fluency is not a destination where everything becomes perfect. Instead, it is a state of comfort with imperfection. Fluent speakers still make mistakes. They still forget words. They still pause occasionally. The difference is that they do not let these moments interrupt communication. They continue forward with confidence. As your ability develops, you may also notice changes in how you interact with others. Conversations feel more natural. Responses come more easily. Listening becomes more active because you are not constantly translating. You begin to focus on meaning instead of form. This creates a deeper connection with the speaker. Ultimately, the goal is not only to speak English well, but to use it as a tool for real expression. To share ideas, describe experiences, explain thoughts, and connect with people in a meaningful way. When language becomes effortless enough to disappear into the background, what remains is pure communication. Ideas flow, emotions are expressed, and conversations become natural extensions of thought itself. Before we finish today, I want you to take a moment and notice something important. Learning English is not just about memorizing sentences or understanding grammar rules. It is about changing the way you think, step by step, until English becomes a natural part of you. Every time you listen, every time you repeat, every time you try to speak even a little, you are moving forward, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. And if this lesson made you feel a little more confident, a little more comfortable, or even just a little less afraid of speaking English, then you are already on the right path. Keep that feeling with you, because fluency is built from small moments like this, repeated every day. So, if you want to continue improving your English in a simple, natural, and easy-to-follow way, make sure to subscribe to Easy Listening English. Stay with me, and let's keep building your confidence together, one lesson at a time.